Hi, I'm Jim.
And I'm David.
And this is the Practical Guitarist Podcast.
The podcast for people who eat, sleep, and breathe guitar.
Oh, look at that.
Hi, Jim.
Hi, HW.
Hey.
Yeah, so we're here with HW, also known as ToneJunkie.
Well, hello there.
Many names. For those of the uninitiated, he is pretty much the king of the Kemper right now. I know that people talk about Michael Britt a lot, but to be completely frank, like Michael Britt's an incredible profiler. But I feel like you have really created this like community around the Kemper and have infused it with so much love and care. And have given me a ton because I'm a Kemper user. I've actually only been a Kemper user for about a year.
Yeah.
But yeah. So, Jim, do you have something you wanted to reveal? Is there?
Oh yeah. So I got this.
The nitty gritty.
I got this piece of gear, and I thought it was important. I thought it was important to share it because who doesn't need more cowbell?
Oh, really? Really?
They sell those, huh?
Yeah, that was it. It's a collector. I had to pay extra for this little guy. I got him
Jim,
fresh in the box. Yeah,
Jim is known for being a collector. Like that's
weird stuff.
So
all right.
Yeah. Hence the Game of Thrones shirt, and there's a Game of Thrones blanket somewhere in the background, and he collects brands of strings, obviously, and all sorts of other fun stuff. You collect amplifiers,
man. I can relate with collecting because I have a bit of an obsessive personality, and so since a young age, I've always had little collections of all sorts of stuff, from rocks to paper clips to whatever. And yeah, lately amplifiers. But yeah, thank you for calling me the king of the Kemper. I call Michael Britt. I still call him King Michael. And but I just put it like this. To me, when I got into the Kemper world, I figured he was Coca-Cola, and there was room for Pepsi. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'm more of a Coke fan myself, but I'll be Pepsi. You know what I mean? It's whatever people prefer. Maybe Coke and root beer. I'm a root beer guy.
Whatever.
Yeah.
No, but like, so it's not just like Michael Britt's impact on the scene, because up until recently, it really felt like he wasn't involved too much in like the social media aspects of it.
Yeah,
right.
And then of course you've gotten him into several podcast interviews, and now you're doing that Kemper show with him and that kind of thing, which is great, by the way.
Yeah.
And what's cool about it though is that like you guys feed off each other. Very much so. I feel like your profiles are kind of like an extension of what he does, but in a different way. They don't really necessarily match one another note for note. Like his profiles come, I would say, more like, and this is just picking on genre a little bit, but more from like the country rock scene, whereas your profiles definitely lean more towards like the modern praise and worship scene, but also I also hear a lot of like the late teens, like kind of Coldplay stuff in there and that kind of thing too. But yeah, no, it's interesting because I don't think people who are familiar with the Kemper realize how much the profiler puts their personality into what they're doing, and
sure, also
how little that actually has an effect on the end profiles too. Because I have done some insane manipulation with some of your stuff. I am not in either of those veins as far as like a country rock player. Or I'm mostly a jazz fusion guy myself. So when I get into your profiles, like I'm like, oh, okay, so here's a Marshall, and it's really bright, and I'm like, take the presence down.
Yeah.
Put some high cut and stuff on there, and they come out really good most of the time. So it's
but don't take it too personally, because he also gets the ones from the metal guys, and he goes, I need to put a little brightness in here.
Right.
It's the complete opposite. Like, in fact, he's absolutely right. I got some from Sin Mix. Your Triple Crown profiles, the TC50 you did a while back, were really good. I had already had the Sin Mix ones at that point. But what I didn't like was like there was nothing mid-gain or clean in there. Or or the ones that were kind of like mediocre. So when your stuff came out, I was like, oh, this is perfect. I can just go get these, and this will give me everything I need in terms of the that range of things. But
Yeah, and I don't know how to even get close to what Sin Mix does with in terms of gain.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of amps. I turn them on 10. They still don't get as gainy as some of the stuff out there. So I don't know how those guys do it, but that's not my scene. You know what I mean? And so I do like what you're saying. You always bring your own ear to it, and I always bring kind of how I would want to play something, and sometimes that does like translate, definitely into something that I have a reputation of having a brighter sound. Sometimes Embrit they say they call it dark or warm. It's funny though when I talk to him, he's like, I don't think my stuff's warm. And I always say like, well, I do think my stuff is bright, but but that's usually the voice. A lot of times I'm after, and it's guitar specific too. And I find I don't know. To me, what I want out of different amps is different. You know what I mean? So sometimes I try, like on the TC50, I tried to I tried to be modern, but not go overly bright, because that's not an amp I would probably choose in my top 10. You know what I mean? I'm more of a vintage leaning guy, but something like that is so versatile that it can do everything. So you got to try to cover everything, and that can be a challenge, man, because even just the challenge I always run into is guitar players today are really spoiled in terms of how easy it is to like manipulate sound and gear and stuff. And back I would say just in the 90s and before, it was pretty difficult to switch a speaker out with a different mic quickly for your average guitar player, because it involved getting screwdrivers and tools and everything. And now you just flick a switch and the IR changes. You know what I mean? And that introduces now a whole thing where you can hear mic setups and speakers that really sound almost nothing alike right next to each other. You can hear an EV with a 57, and then you can also hear a Fathead on like I don't know, on like an old Jensen Alnico or something. And you can hear like how incredibly different those are, and hearing them back to back without the 20-minute speed change of a speaker and microphone, that time that allows your ear to reset. It really is, you realize how bright something could be or how warm something could be, and still kind of be a guitar tone. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So to give you some background on me and how crazy I am, I've been having some conversations with one of our Facebook group listeners, and he's a big proponent on non-solderless cables. He wants to go to solder cables, right? So I decided I'm probably going to go back to solder cables anyway, because I want to lose some high end, and it gives me more versatility because I'm using George Ellis right now. So like what we did is we actually did an A/B test on a 1 foot length of cable. Just to hear the difference, and I actually recorded it in Cubase and posted it in the group. I mean, and you couldn't even, the technology didn't even exist for people to be able to record at home like that. Sure. As little as, 20 years ago. So, we're in a different world, and that stuff's all attainable. And I think we're starting to see that kind of happen in the guitar world more than it ever has. Yeah. I mean, obviously, there's devices like the Pod and stuff that existed, 20, 30 years ago. The 90s.
Oh my God!
And
oh my God!
I just don't feel like those devices. One of our Facebook group listeners and sponsors of the show, Practical Guitars. Not Practical. We are the Practical Guitars. One of our sponsors of the show, Great Lakes Guitar Pickups. He is Nick Bongers is the builder over there, and he has been a big proponent of digital modeling hides the nuances of pickups and stuff. And really, actually, one of the things that really sold the Kemper for me was like we sat down in a room at Gearfest, and I was already planning on buying the Kemper, and he plugged in, and we pulled up the deluxe profile that is stock on the Kemper. I forget who makes it, but and we did the one of the Stones riffs, and we rolled back the volume knob, and it was like night and day different. And that's when I realized like we're there, we've already hit it. I know a lot of people, and this is going to be blasphemy, a lot of people listening probably are going to send me hate mail, but I really feel like, people have talked about that, the moment when modeling reaches the pinnacle of regular old analog technology, and I think we're there.
Mhm.
I just think that people haven't opened their mind to it yet. Like it's still kind of shrouded in the voodoo of, it's not useful. It's still not the amp in the room thing, which I get that, but in reality, I think, and this is more blasphemy, I think the amp in the room thing is purely for us.
Yeah, well, yeah, totally it is. Sure.
I mean, you have to be inspired too.
Yeah, I'll give you my take on that. I mean, I was a total tube amp purist, and I was late to the Kemper game, so I have not, even though now I have a reputation as like a real digital sort of rogue. That was not really my journey into guitar. Yeah, I mean, and I still love amps. I mean, I have a huge collection of amps. I can't really pick it up, but there's a train wreck right here, literally on my desk right now. I mean, there's, I love tube amps. I love playing stuff at home. I never got it. I mean, I had a pod, but to me, it was a toy. I didn't really take it out. And, but my experience was really, when I moved to Nashville, I started seeing a lot of Kempers around, and I just started playing with guys. And I went on a Sunday morning, and I was playing at this church for the first time, and uh, I put in my in-ears, and I brought my Sir Bella, my $2,000 amplifier, and I had my Sir guitar, and I had the Strifecta and a King of Tone, and some clone pedal. So I had probably 2K at each one of those guitar, amp thing. My tone was great. You know what I mean? Like top quality, everything. And I had my in-ears in, and they gave me a 57 like they always do. Wherever you go, they give you 57, and I put that on my amp and I played a little, and it sounded like it always did. And then I thought the track started and the guitars were still in the track. But then I looked over and realized, oh no, that was the other guitar player playing. And he sounded so polished and mixed and produced. I thought they were playing a track with the guitars in it, because we were playing and there was some pads on a track. And I was like, wow, what is that? And I went over and he had a Kemper. And then I met, two other guys in the first like 2 weeks of being in Nashville that had Kempers. And I went, wow, this is really cool. So I bought a Kemper, and then people said, you got to download Michael Britt stuff. You got to check out his stuff. He's got the golden signal chain, they used to say. What's funny is he says what a signal chain is. It's not even like snobby gear, it's pretty simple. And I went, wow, this is really great. And yeah, to me, I look at all this modeling stuff like, I don't know how people feel about electric cars and stuff, but I'm a fan. But we've had electric cars for a long time, but that doesn't mean we had really good ones until semi recently. You know what I mean? And so to me, when I think of sound and stuff, I break it down like this. Sound is all just waves in the air, and it's traveling, and sound really exists in your head. You know what I mean? You've got these like two microphones on the sides of your head that pick up all this sound, and they're never really in phase with each other. And they pick up what's going on around you, and then your brain tells you whether that's good or bad, bright, mid-range, whatever's pleasing. And because of that, I stopped believing in sort of the voodoo stuff, tube warmth and fragile harmonics, because it's all just waves in the air, and it gives you a sensation. And so you should be able to reproduce that through some digital means. Nothing's impossible. There's no special things that a tube can produce through a guitar speaker that some other source can't produce. Now, whether we're at the point where the models are correct, or the capture tech is really getting all of it, that's up for debate. And I think there are a lot of differences still. But tubes do a really beautiful thing, man. They compress in a really beautiful way. They break up in a really great way. They just have great color. And yeah, modeling will get there.
Yeah.
If it's not
Let me
there.
ask you this. So, in when it comes to tubes, this is
Yeah.
when it comes to a tube amp. If you have it turned up enough to hear it, I don't think there is an echo. Somewhere there's an echo. But anyway, um, I don't think that it really makes a difference to me.
Sure.
But as soon as you turn that tube amp up, you get up there, you know what I'm talking about, where you've got it past a certain point where your gain is coming from the tubes, where your compression, whatever compression you want, is coming from the tubes.
Yeah.
That's when I think that's when the magic happens. That's when a tube amp really starts to sing to me. I think that's what scares a lot of folks. Because when I talk to people, Dave knows I'm all in. I'm getting a Kemper stage.
Yeah.
Um, but the thing is that, and I'll be downloading all your stuff. So,
well, hey,
I'll be
man,
buying it all.
I'm going to give a shameless plug for a minute. If you're looking to get a Kemper stage, there is a ToneJunkie loaded Kemper stage that costs the same as all the rest, and it comes with all the ToneJunkie packs already in there. Well, actually, I just send it to you and you put them in. But
cool.
Shameless plug.
Yeah.
Wait until the wacky deal and get their profiles for an outrageously low price.
That's true.
But anyway, what I was saying is that's when the magic for me happens when I'm sitting in this room right here. I've got my Marshall right here. I got my Fender right there, and I could turn the Marshall up, and it just, there's a certain point where I'm not playing the guitar anymore. It's kind of playing itself. I'm just kind of telling it what to do. Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean by the difference in that?
Yeah, it feels very alive, and you get you get all the wonderful compression that tubes give you, and it just feels, a big part of that sensation is being loud in a room too, and you get all the reflection from the space you're in, and that can be a hurdle with any sort of direct solution. Is you're now listening to a source that's mimicking or created from a mic'd source, a mic'd guitar cab, which is not the way we sort of prefer to listen as guitar players. So that can be a challenge for sure. But like we were saying earlier, that's really for the guitar player in the room, loud. And one of the things I always tell people is, we never heard Hendrix's amps. We only heard his amps through mics, through and then whatever they were doing to it. So yeah, well, you heard, okay. but and that's, yeah. but that's sort of the
Yeah, but believe me, it was a really loud amp on a really loud stage with a lot of people. And I was very young.
I've heard some great players live, some Mayer and Al Di Meola and stuff, and Joey Landreth, Robin Ford, and there you can hear some really great live guitar, and it really is, it's a different thing, to hear like a trio or a four piece and a really talented guitar player just go to town, and the instrument is the voice, but for a lot of us, we're not like maybe we don't have a band named after ourselves, and so we might be playing a part, we're playing in a rock band or in a whatever band. And to me, things like the Kemper and the Helix and stuff, it's a tool that allows you to really take control of the entire signal chain. Whereas if you stop at the amplifier, you do kind of leave yourself at the mercy of a sound guy and whatever stuff is available. And you're always at the mercy of the sound guy. But if you can take a little more and put it in your control, and maybe just ask the sound guy to leave your channel flat, you can try to fix some of the problems before they come up. So it's like a tool. I mean, I view the Kemper as like, part of the arsenal. If I had to only have one, I would keep the Kemper, but I'm much happier having amps along with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I still have my Mesa Boogie over here. And it's, I fully, in fact, I'm putting together an analog board right now so I can start taking that thing out for certain occasions.
Yeah.
But the reality is, like, I do a lot of open mics in my area when, COVID-19 is not happening. And I was doing 3 or 4 a week for most weeks. And this was super convenient. I roll my road case in there, take it out, put it on the stage, plug it in. I don't have to worry about the sound guy like not having a microphone for me or anything like that. I just have to have an XLR cable, and that's it.
Sure.
And that makes it super easy to deal with, especially because I play to tracks a lot of times. So it's like, well, I'll just bring my looper pedal in a direct box, and I'm ready to go. And I can't understate the convenience of just doing that. Although I think I think it was like 2 episodes ago where I was complaining. I was like, well, I'm still carrying around the same amount of gear basically.
Right.
But at the end of the day, like you said, there's a fallibility to miking up something, and that is not something you want to deal with in a like a showcasing kind of situation where you walk into a place and you're just going to play 3 songs and you're hoping to pick up a couple people to either download your music or even just be aware of you. Like, you want to make a good impression, you don't want to make a bad impression. So having something like a Kemper is a good tool for that.
Yeah. No, 100%. And with the way, like, even for the bigger acts, touring is not what it used to be. I see a bunch of guys like I've worked with Stu G, who's from a band called Delirious, and now he plays with Michael W. Smith and some people, kind of in the church world. And he got turned on to the Kemper just because the tour manager said, we got 3 dates in Ireland. We're flying over there for this event.
Yeah.
And we got 2 other gigs. Can we get you a Kemper? And he's like, what's a Kemper? Right. and then, now he's got one here. He does a ton of session work around town with it.
Stuff on a thumb drive.
Yeah.
Sticks it in, restores from backup, ready to rock and roll.
And it's the same. And he used to tell me, he back in the day, I actually have some of his amps here because we profiled them and stuff. And some of these amps are still on 240, or is it 220? Whatever, the UK voltage, And so I've got a step down transformer that I use on those if we want to plug them in here. But back in the day, he was telling me in the mid 90s, he had European amps in storage over there and then American amps over here, and whatever they were doing, they'd go back and forth. And just the expense of that at the time was just viewed as, well, that's what we have to do, and that's, yeah. But now that, touring's not what it was, the margins aren't always there to support it, and the dates aren't always there. I know a lot of guys in Nashville, especially guys like Michael Britt, who is in a band called Lone Star, and they're still, they had their hits, and a lot
Never
of times
heard
the
of 'em.
concerts are, yeah. And he'll tell you, he'll go, hey, we get to do a record every 2 years, and we're happy. And yeah, everybody wants to hear the hits. They want to hear the hits from yesteryear, and they know stuff. But their challenge is they can make a living being Lone Star, but they have to be smarter today than they used to have to be. They used to be able to take on all sorts of extra expenses and bring extra people on the road, but now they've got to be smart in how they book and in how they plan. And all those guys can still make a living doing it, but they got to be smart.
So what I wanted to ask, so like, obviously we know, at least I know, and I know Jim's aware of you as the the Kemper guy, but like, where did all this start? Like, how did you get into music? What were you the typical kid with like the guitar laying around and then you pick it up one day and just start playing it? Is that?
Yeah, somewhere around 15 or so, I think I picked up the guitar, and I don't remember why exactly. I mean, the Foo Fighters were big, like bands like that, yeah, um, they're the only band I mentioned because they're one of the only bands I'm still proud of that I listened to back then. If
So you're not talking about your whole Nickelback collection.
yeah, yeah, right. I'll I'll leave Blink-182 and Sum 41 out, but I'll mention Weezer and Foo Fighters,
There you go. Those two.
One would be one worth mentioning because they did the whole hair metal thing on the side that was really funny.
They did. They were a fun band, nothing against them, but it was for that time. And it
Who's the guys that did Pretty Fly for a White Guy? What the heck?
Offspring.
Offspring.
Was it
I
Offspring?
loved them.
They were
That was
cool.
another one that you probably wouldn't be proud of. But I loved those guys. I was I'm one of those guys. I loved Lone Star. You talked about Lone Star earlier.
Yeah.
And I loved Lone Star. I mean, I was a huge fan of Lone Star. They
For instead.
yeah.
You can. He's got one too. They're both at British Audio.
Believe it or not, yeah, I'm sure. Believe it or not,
Tell him ToneJunkie sent you.
I will. Yeah. I come from upstate New York, and believe it or not, that's a huge country scene in upstate New York. Right in the Albany, New York area. You wouldn't believe how many dates we played in the band I was in. I was in the North 40 band. And we, oh God, but yeah, when, so when I heard your channel, and I heard your, because you do the demo thing, as you know, I mean, I'm not telling anything, I'm saying this more for the people listening than for you, obviously. And I said, geez, this guy he's got real good pop sensibility. You do a good demo. You're not out there showing us stuff that like is half baked or look. No, I really do like this. No, you can tell. And like that person that's eating an ice cream cone that's made of marshmallow or mashed potatoes on television so it won't melt under the lighting. You know what I'm talking about? And they're pretending to love it, but it's not real and it tastes awful, right? I mean, that's what you can see a lot of times in these demos, and you definitely present the music. I have to ask you this question though.
Yeah,
There's got to be, if there's one amp you said to yourself, and I'm not saying one amp that you'd have Desert Island. This is my one amp. My one amp question is this. I'm not sure if it's the same as Dave's. Dave, it's this. What is the one amp that you have profiled that you have or don't have, borrowed or whatever, that you said that's a magical amp. That's the that moment.
Man, that's tough because when I moved to Nashville, I noticed there was a saying among the songwriters, and songwriters in Nashville are like actors in LA. You just throw a stone and you hit one.
Yeah.
Or they're always the guy bringing you your salad.
Yeah.
He's got the next.
Or ask
he's
if
got
you want fries with that.
Yeah. And they have a saying, what's the best song you ever wrote? And the answer is the next one, or the one I'm working on, And so, man, my first reaction is to say this train wreck sitting right next to me because I've been playing that and I'm super excited about it lately. But I probably would say that about any amp that I'm playing that week. You know what I mean? So to me, the ones that are magical. Stu G, I've had it for a while here. It's his 62 AC30. I think pre-top boost AC30. So anything from like maybe mid 63, I think they started putting top boosts, retrofit things with the controls on the back in there. So I'd say pre top boost AC30s. I love top boost ones as well, but those pre ones are just something really nice about those speakers. And first time I ever heard one, it was Stu G pulled out his 66 Gretsch, plugged in the 62 AC30, and he started playing Day Tripper. And it's just that sound, you know what I mean? It's like you realize like, oh, there's no studio magic. That's just what that sounds like, It's bright and it's so bright it should hurt, and it does a little bit, but it feels good. It hurts so good. Yeah. And it's just the sound of rock and roll, man. So I might say that one, but there's always another amp that is there's so much magic in the guitar world.
Can I share a couple of my good profile experiences I've had with some of your stuff?
Yeah, please, man. Yeah.
The Everything pack the other night, obviously, and I started going through it, and immediately, for whatever reason, I just put the mini plexi on the studio plexi. I like those profiles. And I don't know whether it's just the amp or whether the way you recorded it, but they're good. I like the Triple Crown. I'm not using them anymore, and I'll tell you why. Because I'm using the Two Rock Ruby. And so when I saw you had the Trainwreck Express, I'm like, I'm gonna have to get that too. And I also got the Fillmore this weekend, the Fillmore 50.
Yeah.
And I'm a huge fan of the Fillmore amp. I've gone back and forth on buying one several times while the show has been going on. And might have actually ended the gas for it because I can just pull it up in my Kemper. I play in a like, I don't know, a bluegrassy like jam band sort of top 40s thing here locally. That's just little extra gig money here and there.
Sure.
And I'm using your deluxe reverb models or the profiles for that. Specifically I think it's the normal channel 3.
Mm-hmm.
It's the vibrato channel 3. And the Fillmore is going to replace it, without question.
Yeah.
They're that good. And so those are really the ones that I've really jived with. And I'm anxiously awaiting anything else you got coming out. You got that Trainwreck coming. That's going to be a big one. I can't wait to get that. I saw something about a Dumble steel string singer.
There's an amp here. Now I gotta say it's not a real steel string singer. I think there's only, I believe there's, yeah. And yeah, no, it's low. It Stevie's is probably with his brother. And it yeah, that amp, no one, the thing is, if anyone knows where it should be very recognizable. I, it hasn't been seen in a long time. I know. I think my understanding was Jimmy probably has it at this point, and because it would surface, I feel like if it was out there,
Or somebody's holding on to it, they know what they have, and they're just gonna like keep it.
yeah. And there's a lot of rumors about it even having been made double wattage and stuff. So it's uh, what I've heard people say is the best guess is I mean, it's not, what my point is. It's not even really a steel string singer anymore. It's something of its own. My understanding was at one point it had the power section doubled, so it's a 300 watt.
Yeah, like a Marshall Major on.
Yeah, and because Howard was doing a lot, and Stevie was sending his stuff out. John Mayer's got number 2. That's his famous one. And that amp has gone around, the number 2 steel string singer, and then Henry Kaiser has one. Most of them are with their original owners, but there are some that float around. John, we believe, has 2, 4, and possibly one other one. So John might have pretty much half the ones that are floating around out there. But the one I got is actually it's a clone that was made by. It's got a little story behind it. There's a video on YouTube of a 25 watt Dumble overdrive special, and it's believed to be the only overdrive special that was made with 6V6s that was 25 watts. It's currently for sale at Carter's, and there's some debate on whether it's an older fake or a real one or what. And but Howard would never speak up because he doesn't believe in.
He never speaks up to anybody. I mean, it's like.
No, and so what happened was the owner of that amp basically made that YouTube video, kind of in the earlier days of the internet, and people said this is what a Dumble sounds like. So him and the guy from a company called Sabago Sound got together, and they decided they were going to make 25 like exact replicas where they got the lettering on the faceplate the same and everything. And so they did that. And the owner of that amp, in exchange for probably some other compensation, he asked, "Can you make me I want a steel string singer, but obviously I can't get one." And so they made an exact copy of the number 2 steel string singer, which had been circuit traced before John Mayer owned it, because it belonged to the owner of a guitar shop in Japan called Full Moon Music. So he had circuit traced it a while back, and he was a Sabago Sound distributor in Japan. So he gave the circuit trace to, apparently at that time it hadn't been on the internet yet, at least for that number 2, but other ones have been traced. And so they gave that. So that amp in there is it's a copy of number 2, which is John's amp, and it has I guess they won't say that it has the manufacturer will not say that these are the transformers that Dumble uses, but it's from the manufacturer who makes the transformers that Dumble uses in the steel string singer. So is it the same? Maybe. Is it not? Maybe. But I'll tell you, when I plug into that thing, it sounds like a John Mayer record. It really does. So one of
our listeners is going to be really excited to hear those profiles.
And the challenge is, I just ordered a Silver Sky because I thought, well, I gotta have that for the demo, and I figure I need something to really just say, well, I reference the sound with this, because Strats are different. I have a Strat I love, but if I dial in the amp for that Strat, maybe someone else will feel like it's not quite right for theirs or something. So I always love to say, here are my guitars, but for this one, I'm going to say, if you're really a John fan, you can at least buy a Silver Sky, and I tried to nail it with the Silver Sky,
So we've had some technical difficulties. Apologize for any audio inconsistencies. We're going to try to patch this episode together up till this point. I forget where we left off, but we've been having an interesting conversation. There's been lots of stuff been talked about. But I think you were talking about how you got started in music. You aren't originally from Nashville. You're from out on the West Coast, right?
San Francisco, yeah, born and raised out there.
So did you start getting into music as like as part of the praise and worship scene, or was that more from like secular music in that perspective?
Yeah, yeah, it was a good amount because of the praise and worship scene. I started learning from I mean, I just started learning songs and chords and stuff, and I was into bands, like I said, the Foo Fighters
Right.
and Weezer and stuff, and but then I started taking lessons from a guy who was playing at my church, and he had been in a band called oh gosh, Jet Boy. And they had they had toured and played with Guns N' Roses and had a couple songs on MTV back in the 80s and stuff, and late 80s into the early 90s. And so he was like a real rocker kind of dude, and he was a real character. And he sort of started teaching me how to play with a band, and that's where I got the first practical application. He needed to go like on vacation or something, and he needed somebody to play. So he said, "All right, go ahead and take my spot for a weekend." So that was sort of thrown in the deep end of the pool, and just started playing with those guys, and did my first recording with that church there. We did a couple records. I did 2 records, and then me and some friends started a band, and we just did. We did like some fun covers, but it was mostly original stuff. We would just throw in, some fun like dance things or something, just to get the crowd kind of going. But we had a little following, just played the pubs and clubs in San Francisco for a couple years. And then, people started having babies and stuff. And, I don't know. I was willing to cut my teeth, out on the, sort of out in the dive bars. But they were a bit older than me too. So I think they were a little over it. But I consistently have sort of played in church my whole life, on and off at different things. You know what I mean? Different conferences. I've done a couple fly dates for people out here in Nashville since I moved here, just indie artists and stuff. Anybody with real money is going to get a real professional, and then the people with no money might call me. Listen, if you're a guitar player in Nashville, you no matter what level you're at, somebody at your same level who's trying to be an artist who probably needs a guitar player. So if you'll play for a sandwich, you'll play. You know what I mean? Yeah. And if you'll play as a favor, you'll play. And so there's a ton of people that you end up doing the favor for once you're getting known as a guy who'll say yes sometimes. So, but sometimes the perks are cool. Sometimes it's like I've had a couple gigs where it's like we'll fly you out here and we'll do that, and there's like some food money included, but there's really no, I couldn't make a living doing it. But yeah, that's sort of where I play and what I do.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's interesting though, because like, I don't think people realize that you can have diverse income streams and not necessarily be like a full scale professional musician, and sure. At least partially support yourself through music. I don't know whether you have a day job or not. It's not really all that important, but I think most of our listeners have day jobs. And
yeah, I did. I'll answer your question. I did. I had a day job, so I actually moved from San Francisco to Nashville to open an office out here for a company I was working for, and it was a family business. And it was a company my dad started a long time ago, and I was running that company for several years. But it was boring. It was really boring. It was like we sold Dickies and Carhartt and like men's apparel, and we did a lot of branding and embroidery stuff, and we so and we would sell to small and medium sized businesses, and that business is really in trouble right now when all the businesses closed. Nobody's buying clothing. Yeah. But about a year being into Nashville, I kind of started doing the ToneJunkie thing, and it slowly just crept its way up. To now it's what I do full time. I just make content, I make videos, I make IRs, and I do that stuff. And it's been a weird journey. And what you said was, diverse income streams. That's something I notice a lot of the guys out here in the music world are really having to do. All the guitar players eventually become producers. All the producers were touring guys who then became session guys. And nobody does one thing. It used to be, you were a guy on the road or you were in sort of the session scene. But, those days are gone. And even now, I was just talking to my friend Jacob Lowry, who's he plays for he plays for oh gosh, who does he play for? Michael McDonald. And he was just telling me how even with this COVID thing, sort of the last beacon are these big producers that are just, they're holding on to what's left of, let's get in the studio together and record in a room, rather than let me send work to you. All the other studios are doing that. All the home studios are doing that. All the independent studios are doing that. But there's still some of the big studios, and they know that once they let that go, it's sort of going to disappear. It's all going to be, I'll send you the track. And so, and they're holding on to that. But largely, the past probably 20 years, everybody in the music industry, LA, Nashville, whatever, has had to start wearing multiple hats.
They're spokesperson. I mean, you could see it from the gear endorsement side of things for sure, because I can remember when the only people that really had real gear endorsements were Eddie Van Halen, and now it's everybody has some piece of gear that they're going to NAMM to show off for somebody. And I mean, there's not anything wrong with that. I don't like playing signature guitars, but that's my own personal hang up. Obviously, no one else cares.
Sure.
But I look at the situation and I go, when you start to see people looking at when guys who's the dude from the Misfits? His name escapes me. Doyle.
Oh, crap.
Doyle.
I could see his.
When Doyle starts doing lessons online, there's something up, right? You're these guys got to make some money somehow, because Doyle's not exactly the guy that if you really want to learn how to play guitar, that you want to take lessons from, unless you're looking for style lessons. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and those guys come from a time too where they probably don't own the masters.
Yeah, for sure.
And whatever residual they did get has been just decimated by streaming, because their deals didn't include, stuff like that.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, we all know when Static Age came out, that record was a collection of a bunch of their stuff, and everybody was suing everybody over it because nobody knew who was getting money for what. So,
yeah, I gotta say, so I literally, speaking of streams, income streams. So I bought my first nice Strat from a used store, a little small store in Albany, New York. And you guys wouldn't have heard of this band, but they were big in the 80s. This band called China White.
I've heard of them.
And they were a metal band.
Yeah.
And they were really big. Well, the guitar player and founder of the band was the guy who sold me my guitar. I mean, that's what he was doing.
Right.
He was working part-time in a guitar shop in Albany, right on one of the main streets coming out of the city, in a little place called Colony, and your way out. And it's just funny because here I am buying, a used Strat for $500. It was an American-made Strat. That's how long ago this was, guys, right? I mean, remember 20 years ago? I think I bought my Strat, and
I think I was born then.
You guys were like kids.
Yeah, we like making fun of Jim's age. That's a recurring theme on this show, so I'm gonna.
I was in my 30s.
Yeah. You just gotten out of the military. No, you probably weren't even out of the military at that point. Oh,
I was out of the military.
Okay, so you were out of the military at that point. All right. Jim's former Navy, so.
Yep. Retired 99.
Yeah, he doesn't wear his heart on his sleeve. He doesn't when you introduce yourself to Jim's I'm former Navy. That's not Jim.
No. I mean, if you could see behind me, behind the screen.
Yeah.
I used to have it hanging over here. I have a Julian calendar, so I know what day, because I work for the government. That's my day gig, right? And I have to know what day of the year it is. Not day of the year, but day of the year.
Which day?
So I know that it's the 147th day, something like that, 48th day. So it's Julian date 2147. But yeah, you got to have stuff like that. But my point is, you talk about these streams. I was watching Andy Aladort today on his Facebook page. I really like Andy Aladort. He's a great guitar player. Played with Double Trouble for a while and did, stood in and played with Dickie Betts and so on and so forth. And he's like, yeah, if you guys want to take any lessons, hit me up. I'm like, all right, I'm going to find out how much it is to take lessons from Andy Aladort, because I'm going to take some lessons from Andy Aladort. And that's amazing that I have all of his books, and including his latest one about Stevie Ray Vaughan. So I'm like, that to me, that's an incredible opportunity, though. I mean, you're talking about people taking lessons from Doyle, just to be able to say, you know what, I took a lesson from my guitar hero,
Sure.
that kind of thing. That's cool.
I'm looking for my notepad.
But David Gilmour's not giving lessons, so
I don't know. He
I hope
gives
Andy
lessons
doesn't
every time
mind
he
that he's
gets on
like,
stage. Are you kidding me?
oh yeah.
So what amp wise, like what have you got in the room with you right now? Because I see some stuff. I see the Fillmore over there. I see the Mesa Boogie California.
Well, I wish I could show you. I wish I could show you in the other room,
Yeah,
because
that's
that's
where all the
really
fun
where
stuff
I've got
is.
everything. But what's in here is I do have the Fillmore over here, and there's a California Tweed, those two Mesas, and then I've got a broken JRT from Divided by
Is that what that
13
is?
behind me. I'm not sure what's wrong with it, but somebody will tell me when I bring it in. And then that's a 412, just a 412 Marshall with 20-watt greenbacks in it. And I really, what stays in here with me is just whatever I'm working speaker out, or I'm changing tubes or doing something like that, or I'm just playing stuff in here to figure out kind of what sounds are in an amp before I'm going to profile it, or before I'm going to kind of just do IRs or whatever with it, or just having fun. But in the other rooms where I got my the kind of the video set set up, and there's too many amps in there. There's too many amps.
Yeah, too many. There, you can never have too many of them. I disagree. You can only have too small a space where you can't play them.
Right.
Especially if I'm in a condo. That's actually why the Kemper is so near and dear to my heart, because it's the only thing I can do that will not get me evicted. Well, not evicted, but fined by the association. But it's, I think a lot of people forget that there are modern living situations too. There was a time when like being loud between the hours of 9 and 9 was okay. And now it seems like people are so inhospitable to one another that if you live in a neighborhood, being loud is not permissible, really. And I know, like, my parents growing up in the house where we grew up, we weren't right on top of our neighbors. In fact, there was a pond on the backside of our property, so a big park, and we had a decent air gap, and I had 175 watt solid state 212 combo, which was really loud. And the couple of times I turned it up, I never got the cops called on me, but my brother with the stereo system in his car got the cops called on him all the time.
Right.
So it's it's about respect now, I guess, more than people just accepting that your neighbors are going to do things that are a little loud sometimes.
Yeah. I'm lucky where I am right now, because we built this house, and that's a concept that was completely foreign to me growing up in San Francisco, because there was no more space for houses when I was born.
Yeah, it's like they all share a wall.
Yeah, right, yeah. And then, but moving to Nashville, they still build a lot of houses out here. So I'm actually in the burbs out here, about 20 minutes south of Nashville, in a city called Franklin. And down here, they still build a lot. And so we built this house, and you go to a neighborhood and choose your spot, and they got floor plans and stuff.
And now everybody's there.
Just come buy it while we're.
Now all the pros are there. I mean, even Robin Ford is relocated to Nashville, which is pretty amazing. And so you can run into those cats in the music stores and stuff like that.
There's a million people down here in kind of Franklin, like specifically, even because it's kind of become it's always, this county down here is always where kind of where the producers kind of were and lived. And but anyway, I've completely lost my train of thought. What were we I was
we were talking about air gap between houses.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
I'm very lucky, because down here we got a lot that would accommodate a basement, and we weren't looking for that. But I told my wife, I don't know what I was thinking at the time, but I said we should get that basement, because we'll find a use for it. I didn't have any
you sure will.
Yeah. So now I've pretty much taken over the basement. My kids still come down here and play Nintendo, but other than that, it's all my space down here. And we had this unfinished area kind of in the center of the basement downstairs. So it's cement on two sides and then, regular walls on the other sides, but it's in the center of the house in the basement. This big unfinished room that just had like an HVAC unit.
Yeah,
and
the bunker
thing, and I realized I could build a sound booth in here, like an amp booth in here. And so I framed like a 9x6 a room in there, about 11 feet tall, and I've got a bunch of cabs in there, and then I just run the cables out into my little office over here. And so, man, I can put a Plexi on 10 with a 412 in there, and they're not going to hear me upstairs. You know, the kids.
My mind right now.
Yeah, you can hear me a little in the backyard, but it works, and it's if you have an extra room and you can turn into an amp room, an amp booth, I highly suggest it because it's very fun.
My plan is to do that. I have a small house in Chesapeake, Virginia.
Yeah.
That's where I am here, and so, but right behind me, literally right behind me, is a studio already. The guy who owned the place before me had already made, you know how you put the walls within the walls, you put a small room within a room, right? It's already done that way. And so it's got all the foam out the side of it, and it's got everything else. And so
perfect.
The guy never finished the inside as far as making it where it wouldn't echo. But I'm going to work on that. And anyway, what I was getting at is, though, even in this room, which you could ask David, it wasn't that long ago. This room
when he started putting up the acoustic treatment, it was like night and day different. So
yeah, right. But I've had my amps cranked in here, and I've asked my neighbors, "Have you ever?" And we're talking middle of the night. We're talking like I'll get up in the middle
like
of the night,
11 o'clock. Jim and I are talking, and he's got his Marshall on 7.
Yeah. And I've asked them, I said, has it ever bothered you? They go, we've never heard you.
Yeah.
Never heard you.
Well, my neighbors say the same thing, Jim, but I know they're full of crap.
No, seriously. But everybody's so used to the train going by, they've already either, they've got some kind of ambient noise probably going in their homes or something, where they're just used to blocking everything out. Because I've never had a complaint ever, which I'm so lucky. I'm like, somebody asked me recently, they go, are you thinking about relocating? I said, why?
Right.
They said, well, you only have one bathroom. I said, yeah, but I have this privacy. I mean, I'm willing to give. I can always put another bathroom in. I can't get the privacy, I have.
That's true.
So I had a couple more Kemper related questions. I don't know. We would try to run through them real quick. And then,
yeah. We had a guitar.
Then I got to ask my guitar question.
Yeah, the guitar. Let's hit the guitar question so we don't forget.
Yeah. So, what is you have, like myself and like David? You have few different guitars. What is the one guitar that's the one you gravitate to? That's the one that says, "Hey, I'm."
It's Goldie, isn't
the guitar.
I'm gonna grab. I've got all three in here, but I'm gonna grab one real quick. So I just happen to have this one. It's the closest one to me right now because I was using it earlier. I was actually using 3 guitars today while I was doing this train wreck pack, and so those 3 guitars are probably my answer. This might be a little washed out on the.
Yeah, it's the baby blue one.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen his videos, you've seen it.
I got this great screen in front of me. Let me see if I can.
It's a Sir, right?
Yeah, it's a Sir, and I'm a big fan of these JM Pros, and I don't know if you can see that, but anyway, it's a blue JM Pro, and I love these guitars. I never was like a big Jazzmaster fan, but to me, I always loved P90s, and it's actually really hard to find guitars that are P90s and have like a traditional sort of F style tremolo. And I mean, they make them, but this is to me one of the best ones on the market. I think the Doheny from G&L is one, is another one. Too. But I always loved P90s, and I don't know, I just really liked this guitar. I bought this guitar and it kind of became my thing. And now my buddy the Suze, who's on the channel with me a lot, he has a gold one, because he would come over here and play it so much that he's like, I feel like I own that guitar. I might as well get one for real. And but I'm a big Sir fan. I think lately they've raised their prices the last couple of years pretty significantly. So they're not as great buys as they once were. I really thought they were the best thing on the market in terms of, to me, I thought for several years there, it was like a team built custom shop Fender. because John Sir there used to run the Fender Custom Shop.
Right.
So
Right.
the sheet that they would build from was just like the Fender Custom Shop one. And for a while they were selling the brand new guitars for $21.95. I mean, it was like 2 years ago. And now those same models, this same model
like
is
3,500.
27,
Yeah.
95 or whatever now. And that, just for the base one, and then if you want to get your own or you want a roasted neck or something, I mean, you're breaking 3,000 and stuff. And there it's, it's a very premium guitar, but I thought at $21.95, it's like the American made Fender stuff, like the deluxe Fenders were 18, so you were only paying a small premium if you like that stuff. I would say to me, this is the one I take out of the house the most, because to me, P90s, the neck can sound like a really fat Strat, and the bridge is it gets humbuckery enough. You know what I mean? It's mid-rangey enough that it doesn't sound like a single coil strictly. But I also really like single coils a lot, and I like how even in a P90 the bass doesn't have that compression that it has in humbuckers. I mean, I love humbuckers too, but I enjoy that. They feel like big single coils. And the thing I specifically like about this guitar is how balanced the pickups are. So I've had people say this when they play this guitar. It's they'll say, how come the middle position is almost like brighter than the bridge? And it's the type of thing, I'm trying not to drop that. It's the type of thing where the presence is probably just a little bit higher in terms of the highest frequencies, are probably just a little higher in the middle position, but on the bridge, it's more steely and trebly, but the presence actually has this nice roll off that sort of makes it sound like a rockin' bridge guitar, kind of tone. But then you have a bright neck and stuff. It's very well balanced. It's a subtle thing that you don't really notice right away, but it's something that I noticed in it. After that, I got like a gold custom shop Strat that I call Goldie.
That's the one I was gonna say. That's probably Goldie, right? Like,
and that's a beauty. That's something. It's funny, that guitar, it grows on me the longer I have it, almost to the point that I would say, since this whole COVID thing, I might be playing that guitar more than any other guitar. If I'm going to leave the house and play out, I'm probably not bringing a 3 pickup Strat. That's just me. But in the house, I'm a huge, huge fan of it. And it's probably one of my favorite guitars to play. And there's one more. I'll show you one of my latest acquisitions, which is like a really, really killer guitar. It's behind me. Dead air. This is a 67. This is a 67 Trini Lopez.
Yeah, Trini Lopez.
And for those people who are just listening, it's a cherry red kind of 335 with Fender
style headstock.
Yeah, like a Firebird or whatever.
Hey, it stays in tune. How about that?
It does. It's funny. I need to add some lubricant to the nut actually, because it is binding a little bit. But this is a guitar that to me is like, I've been looking for 335s for a long time, and there's something about this that I really just dig. The T-top pickups. I think these are actually patent sticker, but they have the T's on the bottom, so they're T-top construction.
I never would have guessed, seeing you play that you were a Foo Fighters fan.
Yeah,
right. Well, Nick of Great Lakes Guitar Pickups is a big Trini Lopez guy too. He's got one, and he continually tells us how good they are, but then says don't tell anybody, because they were like the best kept secret for the longest time, and now they're blowing up and you can't get them and they're expensive. And I think Gibson is reissuing one, or they're doing a custom shop model for like $4,000 that's really good. That
doesn't surprise me. Dave Grohl's been, they've been doing the DG 335 for a while, and obviously, it has the same, holes in the headstock and stuff, but it's Dave Grohl's thing now. But these are super cool guitars. Those 3 guitars, if I had to pick ones, blue would be number 1, and then these other 2 are tied for second.
All right, we got a confession to make before we move on to the Kemper question. So we watched one of your videos like early in the days of the podcast. Actually, it was before I got my Kemper, and I was doing a bunch of research on the Kemper, and I was watching some of your videos, and I sent one to Jim, and I asked for his opinion on what was going on, and Jim and I ended up riffing back and forth about the Sir first off, because you're like, look at this guy with a Sir. It felt like that episode or that song from Dire Straits. What is it? Money for Nothing.
Money for Nothing,
which is really the dialogue of a guy in some store, like an appliance store, looking at a bunch of TVs or whatever. And it just felt like that because we're like, look at this guy playing his Sir. Like, what is his deal? Like, he's got so much money. And Jim pointed out something to me that was so incredible because it like didn't occur to me when we were watching the video. But in the background, there's a pedal board with all of the OCDs on it that you use for your OCD comparison video. And Jim's like, what the hell? Like, he's got every OCD. Like, what is going on with this dude? Like, he's just blowing money, like, left and right and all this stuff. Because obviously we're the practical guitarists, you know, like, we're making note of the fact that there's so much money in that room. And it's like, what is this guy? He's not playing with, like, U2 or something. Like, what's going on here?
No, well, I'm a tone junkie, you know what I mean?
Yes, you definitely are. Believe me, you're not the worst offender.
That was that I'm behind now because they released another OCD and I never got it. But you know, at the time I had been playing an OCD pedal for years and years, and that was my number one overdrive and probably one of the longest like standing pieces of gear that I owned was that OCD pedal. And I had bought all the versions. I bought 1.1 when it came out. I upgraded to 1.2. I think I kept that. 1.4 came out. I got that. Then I started hearing people say I should keep my 1.2, which I think I still had. And then, you know, it just went and went. And I had stuck with a 2 or a 3 for a long time. And, you know, Mike went crazy, 1.7. And
I think I had a 0.5. And like, I remember when I bought it, it was like $200 something plus dollars. And then when I sold it, I got like $100 for it. And I was just like, what happened to these things in the interim? Like, and then I realized like there's like 9 versions at that point, you know, and it's like, oh, well, great, you know, thanks for burying me.
Yeah,
it was just interesting though because like you get these impressions of people when they're doing like YouTube content specifically,
sure.
And now I know your shtick. Like, there's a lot more to it than that. Like the he's got the floral pattern. Show him the mask. Come on. You got to show him. It's laying there somewhere. So since he was in the textile thing, like he's got the mask that matches his hat.
Somebody actually messaged me and said, and I have to look at who it was, the guy's name. I forget his name at the moment, but he messaged me on Facebook and said, my wife's making masks. And I was walking by and I said, hey, you have HW's pattern. And it was this floral pattern. So I traded him some profile packs for a floral mask, but
awesome.
Yeah. You know, it's a good deal.
Well, I remember a while back you did a podcast episode where you were talking about you were wearing, like, you now wear literally the same clothes every day, right?
Yeah.
Like, and that's super interesting because a lot of very, I don't want to say like famous or important people, but they're usually, you know, so that's why we talk about them, right?
Yeah, it's popular in tech for sure, and that's kind of where I picked it up.
That's where I come from. I'm tech background, but.
Yeah, and I grew, you know, in San Francisco. I was growing up, you know, it's always been Silicon Valley, just south of there, you know, and so, and I went to, I studied entrepreneurship in college, which is a weird major.
Who would have thought?
Yeah, but it was just, you know, and so all those guys were trying to get into the startup world, right? So it was all tech and startup people, and that's a thing that, yeah, like Steve Jobs famously has done it. I think Bill Gates has famously done it. There's a lot of people do it.
Einstein did it.
What was that?
Einstein did it.
Yeah, did he?
Yes.
Oh, that makes sense. But it's fairly popular with just a lot of, you know, sort of non-eccentrics, everyday people. I know a ton of people who just, and it's, I think there was like a something called like modular wardrobe or minimalist wardrobe for a while, that like there was even a company like there where you could just buy and they would send you, here's 3 pairs of jeans and 6 shirts, and it's like what you need for the rest of your life, you know. Right. And you know, look, this is actually like the coder's uniform. I mean, this is a black,
the black zip up hoodie, gray t-shirt, right? You know,
all I've really
Levi's.
done is Levi's. I mean, lately I've added sweats into the repertoire as COVID has been here, but you know, I mean, that's just it's easy, you know.
Having been in the military, so I wore the same clothes every day, right?
Right.
And so I found it funny when people started doing that. And what I had done already, because I'd been, like I said, I came out of the military. I wasn't used to having like a big selection. So I had shirts, I had white and like a navy blue shirts. That's it. So I had white shirts and navy blue shirts. And then I had 4 ties, but they were mixtures of white and navy blue. And then I had pants that were charcoal gray or navy blue. That was my, and then of course all my socks were gold toe black socks. And I only had 2 pair of shoes and they were both identical. Right. I had people that said, don't you ever change your clothes? I said, are you serious? I said, you saw I spilled spaghetti on my shirt yesterday.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, it's just funny that you guys mentioned. Now I won't wear the same clothes twice. I got this shirt on and I'll have a different, or different pants and different socks. I change my socks 4 or 5 times a day.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
no, I really do.
Jim's like sharing a lot tonight. Like
every time I change shoes, you wouldn't believe this, but I have shoes that I wear while I'm at this desk. Then I have shoes I wear when I walk around the house. I have shoes I wear when I go out in the front yard, but shoes I wear when I go out the backyard.
Remember I told you he was like a collector?
Shoes.
Yeah, right.
And I have, and my son, I go to my son, I go, I got to have my Fender hat. He goes, you mean this one? I go, not that one. He goes, this one? No, not that one. This one? No, not that one. I have like 6 Fender hats.
Gosh. All right. So to get back on track here, there was actually a clever segue I had worked out there, and I can't remember exactly how it was supposed to work out.
Terrible.
But it was something the equivalent of, you can pick the same clothes every day, but it's different than like when people plug into an amplifier, right? So when I plug into my Mark V, which I have the Mark V 25, I don't have the big guy. And the reason I bring this up, because that amp's near and dear to my heart, I would love to have profiles that match my amp. I have made profiles. I was not happy with the results. I will probably go back and make profiles again sometime in the near future, now that I know a lot more about what I'm doing. I know more about my signal path and stuff in the process to do that. So no thanks, no small part, and thanks to some of your videos, but also, just basically because I've gotten smarter about how to do it.
Sure.
Yeah. But so like the way I set up my Mark, and that is an amp that I think is really specific and actually is a great example for this, is definitely going to be different than the way you set up your Mark. Because for one thing, our guitars are different, obviously, and that's going to be the case with any amp, like vintage amp or otherwise. And then of course you got your post amp EQ on the Kemper to control that. But in terms of the Mark series, like you're dealing with 2 separate EQs. So you've got a 5-band, and that's like a whole nother animals. Like some people want to scoop the mids out of it. I don't necessarily do that as deeply as most people do. And I definitely have my preferred way of setting it up. And to match that out of your profiles is like, I'll be honest with you, it's been difficult to do that with your profiles and others. I mean, I'm not going to lie, but I think it's just because that amp is so diverse. There's so much tonal control there. So like when you realize like you're creating a set of profiles, like for example, that you did the Triple Crown, that's probably not going to be a huge hit with your typical audience, right? Like the majority of the people that are buying ToneJunkie profiles, because it's not really an amp that's aimed at them to begin with. What is the approach there for like, how do I make this the widest, most palatable set of profiles at that point?
Yeah. It's one of the reasons that I've given this a lot of thought. So, it's challenging, right, to try to make everybody happy.
Mm-hmm.
And early on, ToneJunkie really got started, and it was really popular with just the praise and worship guys. And now I would say the praise and worship guys are probably about like maybe a third to maybe half of the customer base. There's a lot of just kind of guitar players who play all sorts of different things and like classic amps and stuff. So I think with an amp like that, I've kind of gone for what I think sounds good, and how I would set it up. But I'm not always necessarily thinking of the praise and worship guitarist, because I want to cover amps that wouldn't be, appealing to them, because I like them too. Marshalls aren't big in that world. Even Marshalls that should be, like 18-watt Marshalls should be right up there with Vox AC30s.
Yep.
One of the packs that has maybe been one of the best selling packs I've ever done is a pack called Stu G's Arshall, and that's a blues breaker. And you never see praise and worship guys talking about blues breakers, but it just is a great sounding thing. It sounds great. My buddy the Sues ended up making a worship performance around it, and that became like one of our biggest free downloads. We were just telling people, you got to try this amp. It works. It works. It works. It doesn't just sounds great. So for something like this train wreck Liverpool, it's a single channel amp. There's 3 positions of a bright switch on it. So I look at it and I go, okay, how am I gonna kind of make something that's gonna work here? So I've really been trying to be conscious about adding into some of my packs. You might have noticed lately, sometimes I'll have EQs that have a good amount of top end roll off, and I'm adding that sort of in addition to what I normally do. So like for example, I did a little 69 Marshall 1930 popular amp, and I try to go for a warmer voicing as well as the sort of brighter voicing I would normally do. So like for this train wreck, my plan was I profiled the amp once with a very full sounding EQ with sort of a top end roll off.
Right.
That's going to work for brighter guitars, or just for a little more of a mix ready, mid range heavy sound. Then I'm going to do something a little more neutral, or what I would call neutral. You know what I mean? And then I'm going to do something that's bright, right? And I try to like label it that way.
Yeah.
What can be challenging is with an amp that's already so diverse, like the TC50 there, TC100.
How many variations can you possibly profile? I mean,
if I did that with every channel, it's already got 9, channels. It's got 3 channels with 3 modes on each. So if I did that, it'd be, just a lot. So,
well, to put it in perspective, I was kind of slamming you for the Mark V. I'll give you the credit on this. So that's 3 channels, 3 modes, 2 power modes for the whole amp, plus the 5-band EQ. There is no possible way on earth that you're going to be able to profile every possible variation that amp's going to get used in. And I think the older vintage amps, like a Marshall Plexi, you're really only going to dial that a certain way. The EQ controls on a Marshall Plexi, like cranked up, are not really going to be that diverse. You really can't.
No, they don't work. The Plexi tone stack is not very powerful at all.
Right.
Compared to like a Mesa,
So I think those, and it's funny because I think those profiles tend to correlate to what I think are like more universally good that can work in a lot of situations. But I think that's because those amps have like such a straightforward way of operation. Voxes are sort of like the opposite end of that, I think, because the cut controls and all that. But
sure,
I'm really curious to see how the train wreck comes out, because I know it's kind of Voxy flavored, and I haven't played an Express I haven't played an Express. I played a lot of Express profiles. I tend to like them, but I've always wanted to try the Liverpool. And I have this sinking feeling, because I'm not a huge Vox fan. I have this sinking feeling that I'm going to play it and I'm going to be like, eh. But that's going to be the Voxy lineage more than the amp itself, I think.
So what I did here for this one too was I did it once through this new cab I got, which is a 1969 Marshall cab with original greenbacks. So that's sort of the more Marshall flavor. And then I did the whole amp again with a set of 66 silver Alnicos, some Celestian Alnico silver bells. And so those are more Voxy for sure, because they got those Alnico speakers. And hey, I got one with the bright switch on where it's going to be kind of almost top boosting,
in your face.
But this is a different amp. You know what I mean? I wouldn't even call, it's EL84s, and I can put it through those speakers, but it's not a Vox. You know what I mean? So it's sort of those. I feel like you're getting the train wreck in a Marshall flavor and a Vox flavor. And that's kind of how I've approached it. But it's a train wreck.
Ken Fisher's perspective and approach to building amplifiers is so unique. I went to go look and see if I could build a clone of a Ken Fisher train rack, right? Like an Express. And I found out like there are 9 publicly available schematics, and they're all like vastly different, right?
Yeah, and that's why he named the amp instead of giving him serial numbers.
Right. Well, and it gets more complicated than that, because a lot of people think they're Marshall derivatives. They're not. They're based on Super Reverb. Like the internals of the amp have way more in common with a Super Reverb than they do a Marshall, which is crazy to me. But you would never think that.
Dumbles have the ODS, the output stage is identical to a Bassman, which is what Robin Ford was playing when Howard thought up, I'll make an amp for Robin Ford, which is how that came about. And the Steel String Singer is actually, the output section is from an Ampeg bass amp.
It doesn't surprise me.
And it's one of the reasons it's so high wattage. One, because it was like
Yeah.
150 watts. That's why it's 150
It's
watts.
for clean
And
headroom.
then it's got this thunderous bass, and that's a big amp, a big sounding amp, and it's heavy. It's as heavy as a bass head too.
So you also do some stuff with the Helix, or at least you've done some stuff
Yeah.
with the Helix. I'm not going to ask your opinions on the Helix. I know you're a Kemper guy. I know you're a Kemper guy at heart. And I know there's like this whole war behind the scenes. And it's so funny because I owned a Helix, right? I actually went from the Helix to the Kemper. And the reason I did was because I thought the Helix form factor, it was still a pain in the butt to haul around. And I was still using like tube amps to do my amps. Like I was using it in a 4-cable method, and it was just overkill. And I had a giant pedal mover for that. I had probably $3,000 or $4,000 wrapped up in pedals on a pedal train Trio 43, and I literally could not put it in the trunk of my car. That's why it's like, no, this isn't gonna work. So I downsized. I actually built a board. It was smaller, and it had 2 tiers, and I downsized from that and got the Kemper. And to put in perspective, like some of the pedals I have. I have some of the weirder, like more exclusive stuff. So I got a Sunface here.
Yeah.
I have a King of Tone on order. I have an Ethos actually on my pedal board, which is over in a bag over there on top of my Kemper road case. And I find myself kind of thinking like about the Kemper and the idea of that form factor. I think the Kemper stage form factor, and I'm like, I kind of want to get another one. Just to have it around. But at the same time, it's like I can't justify the extra expenditure. And I think that's going to hit it out of the park for them as opposed to the Helix. But that's my own perspective on it. But what I wanted to ask is like, do you still use the Helix? Do you take it out? Do you do performances with it and stuff?
I have played with the Helix live, but for me, to be honest with you, I play pretty much the same performance that I've played for the last year and a half, almost 2 years, every Sunday morning when I play, because I just want it to always be there and sound, you know what I mean? Like, I have occasionally, I'll make another performance and use it, but without thinking, I have one performance set up in the Kemper that is my 90s AC30 and is the amp I played before I had a Kemper. And so I always just fall back to that.
Yeah, it's home.
I've played the Helix live. So the Helix for me is a cool device. It's not my preferred one. I prefer the Kemper, but there's nothing wrong with the Helix at all. When I make IRs, and I'm working on some more right now, my goal is to kind of put out IRs every couple months, put out 3 or 4 packs of IRs. So I did 3 about, 2.5 months ago, or 3 packs about 2 or 3 months ago. That's really the device that I use those IRs on. So I shoot those IRs, I try them out on the Helix, and I do it on the Iridium too, the Strymon Iridium now. But I've actually, it's on my to-do list to do more stuff with the Helix, and I don't feel the need to be the guy who makes a bunch of Helix presets, but I've given away a good amount just to sort of showcase the IRs and stuff, and I think it's a really great piece of gear. I think we were talking about the Mark series and the EQs and stuff. I think one of the great things about digital is just you can add an EQ before the amp, between the amp and the cab, after the amp. I think that's where a lot of stuff comes alive. I've done a lot of videos lately on my what I call my basically trying to get guitar players to, like, originally you hear your sound with 2 bands of EQ. It's like high and low.
Yeah.
And then you kind of like somewhere you figure out mid-range is important. And then with something like a Mesa, a lot of you add presence in, right? And or on the Kemper you add presence, and then that 5-band EQ on the Mesa is really giving you something else. And I believe that does that EQ fall in the power amp section of those amps?
Yeah, it's definitely post preamp. So and I think it's actually past the loop too.
So yeah, it's probably after the phase inverter or something, probably before the power amp, I imagine.
No, actually, it's not past the loop. I take that back. It is post or
pre-loop.
Yeah.
So it's the type of thing where, like, I have a couple videos out lately where I try to get guitar players to hear their sound in 8 parts.
Yeah,
and
they're good videos. I have watched them.
Yeah, I need to do that for the Helix just to sort of get those eyeballs on it and get people, because that's, to me, the Helix sounds best when you just go, I'm going to have an amp cab and an EQ on.
Yep.
And sort of, and you can do that pre, in the middle, or after. But if you really, hear your sound as, here's the deep frequencies, here's bass, then fullness, low mids, high mids, treble, presence, and air. If you can sort of identify those, I mean, you're ahead of the curve, I think.
The only thing for me, well, I already think in terms of that, but only because I'm doing a lot of recording. The only thing that I think the Helix brings to the table over the Kemper at this point is the flexibility. Being able to route your signal chain. I mean, you have extreme control over the signal chain in Helix.
Yeah.
But
Axe too.
Yeah. Well, the thing is, I feel like a lot of their amps that are in there are sort of cartoony in a way. Like they either have too much gain, or the way that they're structured so that like the gain ramps up really fast. And there's a smaller area of play for that clean signal. But the other real issue I had with the way the Helix handles things, like the 5-band EQ in the Mark is, I think, one of the most musical EQs you can get for an amplifier, like something that's built into an amplifier. And I would love if the 5-band EQ that was in Helix sounds like the one that's in a Mark, but it doesn't. It doesn't.
Yeah.
I know people are like, oh yeah, it's the same thing. It's got the same frequency bands. It might be the same frequency bands, but the Q is wrong. And there is like a buffer or something that goes on in that circuit that seems to be lacking, that gives it that polished sheen. And I don't run it like most people do. Like a lot of people, you see the deep V, like I'll actually have just like a slight carve in the mids, and then I'll push the upper mids. I'll just a little bit. I don't want it to be fatiguing on the ear. And I'll use the bass depending on what, obviously what cab I'm running through, because that's a big feature of those amps. But I just think that like nobody's accurately modeled that yet, and you're not going to get in the Kemper either unless you shoot profiles that are kind of geared up the way you want to. However, I will say this: they make a 5-band EQ and a pedal, and you can put put it in the loop on a Kemper, and it'll probably sound just like the real deal. So it's something that I've thought about experimenting with, but it would be interesting when I get my my Mark profiles done. I might shoot them over to you just so you can see how different they are compared to what you do. Because
and that Mark V, I don't know if you've seen that Mark V pack that I've done. That was pack number.
It was early. It was early.
5,
and it was great for early. There's still good stuff in there. I don't want you to think I'm totally ragging on it. There's such a diverse customer base and such a diverse like range of players that use ToneJunkie stuff that I get guys who tell me, oh my gosh, your Friedman dirty shirt, I call the dirty surly. Those are the best rock profiles I've ever heard. They're all I play. I had a guy come up to me maybe 6 months ago and go, dude, your Mark V, I downloaded when you put it out. It's still my favorite pack. I can't, you know what I mean? Hey, awesome. The BE, and the BE, you did the BE 100. And honestly, like I played those amps for real before, and they only have like 2 good settings. Like the knobs don't do much. They're like an old Plexi in a lot of ways. And I think now you captured it. I mean, for what it's worth.
That was an amp too I did during this little stage where I was experimenting with the aux box, and I think I did the whole amp through the aux box.
Don't tell me that.
And it's in the profiles. It's in the notes.
I know. It probably is.
It's in the notes, and I think I was experimenting with it. And I thought they came out good at the time, but I might get a BE 50 Deluxe and give that whole thing another app back just for fun.
Interested. I'd be interested.
Yeah.
The other one that you've done, and I think I've messaged you about this before, you may not even remember, it was a long time ago, but you did that. You were doing the subscription thing where you would send out like new profiles every week or whatever.
Yeah.
And you did the PT, and you didn't like it. And I asked you, like, is there any place I can get these profiles? And you're like, you just didn't say anything. So I'm like, well, they must be bad. Like,
wait, which amp was it?
The Pink Taco.
Oh, I'll try and find them, man. I'm sure I got them. I did. You know what? I don't know if it was the one I had or whatever, but I just found that amp to have a certain quality that I was not digging. It's a weird,
raunchy thing. Like,
yeah. It just, I don't know. And maybe it was the speakers I was pairing it with too. but I don't know. I remember I put them out in that free thing because I got the amp. I didn't love them, and I said, well, I'll push them out, for free. People like them
yeah, they like them or won't, right?
But yeah, you gotta love what you sell and what you put out there.
For sure. And
so.
I just figured they were so bad that you were like, I'm not going to show anybody these anymore. Like that was kind of silly to me to put them out there, but it's fine. If you find them, awesome. If you don't,
there's a good question. They must be somewhere on my computer, but yeah, if they're not in the everything pack. I wonder what I did with them.
I haven't found them in the everything pack. Maybe they're in there somewhere or something.
No, they might not be then. Because originally that free stuff wasn't in there, and then later I just added it all in case people didn't have it already.
You should call that the PTO pack, the paid time off pack.
PTO, paid time off. Yeah. When you said PT, at first I thought, does he mean the Pete Thorne? Because I didn't think that amp was bad. Completely different amp. Completely.
That's a really great amp. Actually, that's I think one of the best amps out there. That PT 100. I haven't played the PT 15, but I think that's a really cool sort of innovation they've got with that PT 15 with the IR. It's a full tube head, but they've got a load box and an IR loader built in, which is very cool.
I think it's cool that these companies are doing these lunchbox combos, but I think the interesting thing is so I prefer the Mark V 25 to the big guy, and people are like, why would you want the little? Because the mid range is so much tighter. And it's more focused. And I think people have a tendency to think bigger tubes, bigger sound. And that's actually true. But you don't necessarily want a bigger sound all the time. And a lot of that comes from the cabinet anyway.
Right.
So I'd like to see if I could have my wish list, since I have your more of the lunchbox stuff at times. That's part of the reason why I'm so interested in what the Trainwreck's going to sound like, is because if it's got that more focused mid-range thing going on, it might be a little bit more interesting.
I think there's some of that in there for sure, especially on the full settings. But this is a grunty amp, you know what I mean? It's hard to even scoop a Trainwreck, really. It's just gainy, and you can't.
They're actually really brittle sounding, like the at least the Express seems to be.
They can be. The bright switch is really powerful. I think in that way it's like a Mesa, right? The stronger you make an EQ, the more bad sounds you're going to get out of an amp. That's one of the things about those old Marshall Plexis. The EQ does so little, it just always kind of sounds like it. You just if you max
it's got
it out,
one sound, and that's good.
and really it's just, do you want bright channel, the regular channel, normal channel, or jumper together? That's sort of the Plexi sound, but. I think it's got a really powerful, this Liverpool and the Express have a really powerful presence control. And then it's got a super powerful bright switch. And I've almost found it's like if you go to the, and it's got a 3-way bright switch. So if you have the bright switch off, you're sort of free to use that presence control. But once you flip it up to the top setting, I mean, you're almost using that presence like a cut, to get rid of something. Because you want those present frequencies, but you can't handle everything up in the high end. And, you end up also cutting some treble and stuff too, because these amps are interesting. The gain gets going really fast. There's not really clean sounds in them.
Well, I almost wonder if those kind of amps are legendary because of the recording scenario, because then you get them into the studio and you can have the EQ set, bright as all get out. And then you're just on you're at the mixer going, turn off the treble. And that makes it work, or you're putting it to tape and you're saturating it. Or that kind of thing,
sure.
Just to curb it out. But
I got a quick question for you, HW.
Make it a long one.
So you no, this is a quick one. Now I don't want names on this, but has there ever been someone who came to you and who may or may not have a little bit of a bigger following, and said to you, I just can't I'm being asked to use a Kemper, or for some reason they're switching to Kemper, and they're like, I can't get it. I love my tubes. Convince me I need a Kemper. Has there ever been that person? How, if you did convince them, how was it that you convinced them that it was okay to use the Kemper out there on stage? You know what I mean?
I have gotten the call from several people. I got the call, although I haven't gone in yet for Michael McDonald to go show him, and there's been a couple times where, people they're hesitant about using a digital anything. But Really, it's been easiest to convince studio guys, and not even studio guys, producers, because for them time is money. So I've converted quite a few producers out here where I'll bring the Kemper over, show them how it works, show it to them, and once they realize that with the flick of a switch, instead of collecting 5, 6 amps, and a lot of the independent guys, if you got a band coming to town and they even might have a studio that they share with 2 other people or something, and there might be 3 or 4 amps in there, but they'll also go borrow amps from their friends just so they have all these amps in the studio, because who knows what's going to happen. And once they realize the time they save by just clicking over, and now you've got the matchless with a greenback or the matchless with an 830, or we've got a different matchless altogether. We're going from a Clubman to a Chieftain. The time that saves just in the overdubs, or now let's get another guitar sound for another part, they get it right away. They just
or if they have to come back, like that's the craziest scenario I've heard, where like a band records, they got 2 weeks here, they record a bunch, and then they come back in a month and they got a whole new set of amps sitting there, and they're going, how do we get those sounds so we can match up and do overdubs and or punch in? And it's like, if you have the Kemper, save them. Like, what's the problem?
Yeah. To me, the producers have been the easiest ones to convince. I've never had anyone really, fight me on it, but there's definitely some people who just go, no thanks, I'm not into that. And there's been those people. But hey, if I was the Edge and I could bring 6 vintage AC30s and some 5E3s, and I didn't carry them, and somebody took care of my rig and wired everything up, I'd probably do that. I mean, that's fun.
Yeah. But as long as every time I hit a power chord, I hear it, like, it sounds great.
Yeah. And I did have a guy say to me one time, he's like, I just can't. It was the gentleman who makes TMG guitars, and we were having a conversation, and he said to me, I just can't picture the Edge ever bringing out like a modeler, and I said, well, you're right. I mean, the Edge comes from a time
except for the pods that are in his rig.
Well, there are pods in his rig, but it's like, that the Edge became the Edge doing this. There's no reason to switch, But at the same time, you got guys like Pat Metheny who have been using digital stuff, and he's been wanting to sound like a trumpet since the very first like Boss synth thing, and it doesn't sound like a trumpet, but it sounds now like Pat Metheny. So, it's all just music.
That's a great analogy. We had somebody on the show not too long ago who was a diehard tube guy, and he was kind of poo-pooing, because I mentioned to him, like, I still prefer tube amps, but I mean, my Kemper's the thing that I use. And it was like, well, yeah, but there's something you miss with that. And I'm like, I don't really feel that way. I still don't. I mean, it left me with kind of a bad taste in my mouth, because I'm just like, who are you to decide what I'm missing?
Yeah.
Like, that's up for me to decide. And if I think I can get away with it, and I do get away with it. And by the way, using some of your profiles specifically, like, I've gotten the best compliments of my tone of my life. And I've been playing 20 years. Like, that's impressive. Yeah. And to go into a situation with a digital piece of equipment and not have anyone care, actually have people come up to you and tell me, don't bring your amp. This is much easier to deal with and sounds better. Like that's the best compliment you can possibly get.
And I mic up amps. I mic up speakers all the time now. Yeah. When I first started doing this, I had a couple techniques that people had shown me. Now there's still a couple techniques that I fall back to that pretty much always work, but I've tried everything I can think to try, and I will tell you, the way to get the best guitar sound is to mess with it a lot.
Yep.
Like, best sounding guitar stuff on records have a bunch of EQs and stuff on them. And what I found is, well, EQs act one way when you do it pre-gain or pre-amp, and then another way post. And when you listen to those, and I haven't met an amp that I didn't like, pushing a little bit of 200 and then a little bit of 1000, a little bit of 16, and a little bit of 5K.
That's why everybody uses tube screamers and stuff. Like, they're all shaping it. It's a form of EQ.
Yeah, because it just brings out a little bit. And like Tube Screamer, I haven't met a solo that didn't like a bunch of 500K being thrown at it, to really jump out and cutting the bass, cutting the highs, right? I had a buddy tell me just recently, he goes, man, I was using your 5E3 stuff. It sounds just like Joe Walsh on Hotel California. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure he used a 5E3 for that solo. I don't know,
Yeah.
but that's what it sounds like, And it's like the amps do a certain thing, but if you've got a tone and you've got two mics and one is this spring, this ribbon thing held up, and you're moving that around, it's like you can do a lot, but there's a point where you get to where you go, man, if I could just push a little 200 and cut everything after that up to like 450, I'm going to get a nice, like kind of clearer bass on my Marshall, because I'm going to low cut it below 100, maybe even 125. I want to push a little at 200 to get my little, my sound of my bass notes in there. And then I want to give it some space. I want to give that bass some space before I get into the mid range. And, on a Marshall, I'm probably not going to go too much into the low mids anyway. I've moved mics all around. There's no little position where you can perfectly control 320. You know what I mean? You're controlling everything all the time. And so that's the art. And then the EQs are the science, and I think the digital stuff just makes the science so much easier, and it makes it so you can bring it with you. I've been doing a ton on EQs lately on the ToneJunkie channel. And I don't know if you guys have seen some of those videos, but just talking about like, hey, here's an EQ that'll work really well in front of the amp if you've got a Strat or a Tele and a thinner guitar, and here's why.
I think those videos are so great, and I think they're great for people who don't even have a Kemper, because even though you're doing it in a digital space, you can do that stuff in the real world, and people forget that there are EQs for amplifiers, that you can put preamp.
Here's my Boss GE7. That's like
there you go, right there,
painted black. But this is the most valuable pedal. I mean, you put this in your chain and you can just do so much with it,
There's that. And then the other thing I wanted to commend you on was when you did your series where you were showing how to use the dirts in the Kemper with a post EQ to change them into a different dirt sound. And I think I use your King of Tone preset right now just because I'm waiting on my King of Tone to show up. COVID. I ordered it 2 weeks ago. I've gotten it to list a year ago, and I didn't buy it, and I thought, I'll have to get on the list again. And I reached out to them, and they're like, no, you can buy it. So
I can tell you this, because I just had, believe it or not, this guy came from New York City. So he sat in Queens for 4 or 5 days before he moved. This little box right here. So I don't know if it's to do with them making sure everything's clean before it goes. Mm-hmm. I'd rather to know it was, but I think that things are coming out of New York City very slowly. You got to remember, he's out in up in Connecticut, right?
He's in Connecticut. But they've already said they're only running half staff right now, and they're running a couple weeks behind. They talked to me initially when I reached out to them. It wasn't like they were trying to hide it, and I asked them or anything. It's just gonna take a while to get here. Which is no big deal. Like, I'm cool, I can wait. But I've been using Helix Native for the King of Tone in there, and then of course I discovered yours because I knew you'd done the Klon, and I think the King of Tone wasn't as close as the Klon was. The Klon you guys did was ridiculous. But the King of Tone is like, it'll work, at least until I get one. Like, it'll work.
It's a good sounding drive. You know what I mean? It didn't quite perfectly get the KOT, but it sounds good on the Kemper.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Edited EQ.
Well, this is the one weakness the Kemper has, is like the drives in it are not that great sounding, but they're 19. I mean, you're talking about a device that's like 8 years old now.
Yeah. Well, there's new drives coming.
Oh, I know.
I know a couple that have been built that they have built, and I don't know why they haven't pushed out the first few, but they were building some, and then I had a conversation with them at NAMM where they asked what pedals do you think should be in here, and I spelled some out for them, and I know some of those choices they were like, yeah, that's on our radar, and they had a couple built at the time.
I can't wait to see them, because that's my biggest pet peeve, because like.
And I asked him too. I said, hey, can you just throw a full 10-band EQ on page 3 of every overdrive? And they were like, yeah, we could do that. Like, it won't. They were like, yeah, we can make it take one block, and we could do that. to them, it didn't take up a significant amount of DSP to add that in. I was like, please do that so that, you know, my tube screamer, when I go in there, is volume, gain, tone. Like, that's what I want, simple. But if I page over, now I get my extra settings. You know, maybe I want some of this or some of that.
I'm glad you got their ear, man, because that's the kind of input they need to just like.
We'll see if they do it. Well,
yeah. No,
I
I think you've sold quite a bit of product for them, whether you like to believe it or not. They owe you a little bit of gratitude for the U.S. market. Maybe not a ton, well, you know, but a little bit at least.
They gave me. I think I got on the Kemper train when it was when, you know, it was really starting to take off in the U.S. a little more, and the church market has had a good amount to do with that. I think they were looking for professional kind of grade silent stage solutions. They did give me the only white Kemper rack that exists.
I know.
And I was very grateful. I was very grateful for that. They made one for NAMM. They decided not to put it in production, and they sent it to me. And after I had been asked for it for like 2 years, joking with them. And then one day they said, hey, we want to send you something. Yeah. And it showed up at my doorstep. And yeah, thank you to those guys for that.
Well, the guys at Kemper seem like really stand-up dudes. I haven't met them yet because they don't come to Gear Fest, which is usually our event for the summer. Obviously, that's virtual this year. No NAMM this year, so won't be doing that either. But hopefully I get the opportunity to have a conversation with Christoph at some point, because I'd like to pick his brain. The guy's a genius. I mean, he's talking about writing assembly code to make that thing work, and it's just I'm in the tech world and I know what that means. And when he says, you know, DSP, like last I heard, they're only using like 40% of the DSP in the Kemper. So
yeah, he's got a lot of thoughts about, and he was telling me and some other guys at NAMM about some of the challenges of getting younger guys out of school who then come in and write really robust code. And then he apparently always has to educate them and say, it's great that you did it that way, but it's, you know, why did you do it that way? Why didn't you just do it this way? You know, just because you can make it bigger doesn't mean you should, or just because you have the capacity to work with.
Oh yeah, no, I've been combating it for years because part of my job is a little bit of software development, and I've noticed that like as hard drives have gotten bigger, people are more willing to just throw garbage in there that doesn't need to be there. And in a game like this, where efficiency is the name of the game, like you need to be efficient.
I've been saying that since the 80s. Let me tell you something. So just to give you an idea, the computer I worked on in the Navy was one of the first computers that went to the moon. So it
what year was this?
It had less memory than like this speaker. But we used to have to write code, assembler language, for UNIVAC computers that would fit on 16K. So yeah, I feel his pain. It was a big deal to get 32K and to get 16 bits. To get 16 bits was wow.
I'm pretty sure the show notes are bigger than 16K.
Yeah.
It was crazy. But yeah, I can't imagine the kind of work that goes into there, and it must be cool to have the ears and eyes of these guys. You talked about some of the silent stages. I've talked to David a few times about some of the need for silent stage. My cousin is one of the top Elvis impersonators in the country, and obviously his guitar player, his whole band is on a silent stage. He has production. They have marks on the stage, all the dancers, all of his stuff, you know, and even he's on an acoustic, an exact replica of Elvis's Gibson that he had, and with his name Elvis Presley down the fretboard. But anyway, some of the stuff that you're talking about is really important, even to people outside. You must have a lot of people who now talk to you outside of the religious community in the secular music that are saying, I need this for silent stage. I'm going to play, you know, this thing. And I know that from talking to friends that do the, you've got The Voice now, but you've got every one of those things has got a band out there that may or may not be live, but 9 times out of 10, they do have a rig, they are plugged in, and they're A-B'd to be ready to go in case the quote unquote track goes down.
Like what happened to us earlier?
Yeah. What are some of the things? You don't have to give us any, trade secrets or anything, but what kind of things that you see as far as that goes, as far as outside in the secular music?
Yeah, I mean, there's always been a trend, towards. I think at the end of the day, it's like uh, consumer music instrument products are no different than any other consumer products. People want ease of use and portability today more than ever. We all know that MP3s don't sound as good, but we don't care. We all know that like you lose something by using Bluetooth, but we don't care. We would rather have all the music in our pocket than have,
Convenience.
an Eagles, yeah. We then have, the Eagles on vinyl on our tube stereos, So, Macintosh power, hi-fi amps just don't sell that well anymore. And that they're still just as great. What I see is really it's the travel thing, and it's all the way up the line. Sean Tubbs was playing with Sean Tubbs, big YouTube guitar player and stuff, and obviously he was playing with Carrie Underwood and had a really great gig with her. And it was the tour managers who said to everybody, him and the bass player and I think the other guitar player, we're going to Axe. We're going on Axe Effects. Because the stage show, they wanted a guitar player out there to come go back to back with Carrie and do the solo. But they didn't want a guitar rig out there in one spot on the stage because he's just part of the show. He's like a backup dancer who happens to make music as well.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like,
what a great paying gig, right?
yeah, and they were having stuff move all around the stage, and so the option of like setting an amp down was just it's a no-go. So they went that way. You see that a lot now. You see that a lot, and you see. I'm even seeing. I know a cello player here in Nashville who is getting passed over for some gigs because she just says, "Well, I don't want to play my electric cello. It doesn't sound good. It's not a good thing." But they really care less about the sound than just being able to put an electric cello and not buy the extra airline ticket. So. I think even in amplifiers, though, you see a trend like we were talking about those lunchbox heads. The trend is towards smaller, portable, kind of stuff. And, I know from looking at the vintage market, Princeton's and Deluxes are worth more right now
than super reverbs.
Supers. Yeah, supers and twins. You can't sell a
joke
super
about
right
it all
now.
the time, by the way.
Yeah, it's like you got if you got to let your vintage super in great condition go for $800-900 if you want to move it because
it's absolutely nuts.
Nobody wants something.
I'll take your super reverb. Like, I don't have any place to play it, but in 5 years when I do, like, I'll be really thrilled to have your super.
Yeah, I have a twin here, and I love it. But man, anytime I move a heavy amp, it just reminds me. Oh yeah, this is why I don't take amps anywhere. They come to the house. The UPS guy hates me because there's so many amps coming through all the time. But once they get here, they live here because they're they're gonna get old here.
One more dumb question, and then we'll start heading out.
Sure.
Dumb question is when you cart your Kemper around, are you using rack? Are you using the toaster? You're probably using the stage mostly now. When you were using your toaster, did you use the Kemper bag, or did you have another bag that you loaded up with it?
Man, I always use the Kemper bag, and it always worked for me. And I always just put the Kemper remote right on top, and just put the handles over it and Velcroed them. And then I just carried it. And because what I was doing mostly was a couple times I got on an airplane with it, and I just put it in my suitcase and then packed my clothes around it to make sure it didn't move. And then other than that, I'm just putting it in my trunk. Or my front seat to just drive to church on a Sunday morning. And then, I park close and walk in. And so I also use like gig bags for those occasions too. So it's not a situation where I'm worried about it getting damaged too much, but I do have, but I've never used it, a hard case
I have
that has foam pieces that you pluck out. And I do have one in case I ever need to travel with it. But since the stage came out, I've 100% stage, throw it on my back with a guitar, And they got a backup guitar at the church I can always grab if I break a string, but that doesn't happen often. And
You're selling me on that stage, man. Let me tell you.
My biggest thing is one trip from the car. If I can carry all my stuff in one trip, to me, I'm like, man, this is heaven, you know? So Kemper in one hand, guitar on my back, and I can still open a door with the other hand. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I've got the I guess it's a Gator roll away pick and pull foam case, and I've been using that since I bought my Kemper pretty much. And I noticed that because I wasn't real big on the Kemper bag, but I did notice that Gator came out with bags. Yeah. And if Gator had had the bag when I bought my case, I probably would have bought the bag. So I can now see myself backtracking and be like, I'd rather have the bag.
Sure.
It's not cheap though. It's $100.
Yeah, I think the stage bag is nicer than the older bags they had, and they still have those older bags. I think they've thought through the stage bag and made it a little. It
looks a little bit like the Helix bag.
Yeah, it does. It does. And you know what? When the stage came out and there wasn't a bag, I used my Helix bag, and that's a great bag.
And they're basically the same, right? Actually, I had a really bad experience in my Helix bag, which is why I'm like, I don't know if I want the stage bag either. But there are options and alternatives for that. For the Kemper itself, finding something that fits, and like you're kind of rolling the dice on Amazon and all this stuff. So it would be better to have a branded thing. But I heard all the horror stories about the Kemper bag, and I'm like, I don't know. And the fact that it didn't fit the remote up front because I got the toaster, I got the power toaster.
So here's the hack. The case is actually designed for the amp for the Kemper to not drop straight down, but to lay down flat.
Oh.
And then it fits on top. And here's why. You'll notice on the Kemper bag, the top unzips and the bottom unzips.
Oh.
And it's designed to be a soft version of, those head cases where the back and front open up?
Yeah, like that. Right, clamshell.
It's designed to be that, but nobody seems to notice that you can do that. So everyone stands it up. And when you do that, it's too tall. And so then you place the thing on top and it doesn't shut right. But if you lay it down, now the problem with laying it down is that then you sort of are resting on some of the plastic knobs. So there is, the option, the
unless you lay it on its back,
possibility, that if you put that heavy thing on top, the remote, that you could damage it if it were rumbling in a car or something. But that is, it's supposed to, you're supposed to be able to take that thing, put it on top of your amp, unzip both sides, then you can plug in the back.
All right.
Front.
I got your next video idea. You need to show how the proper use for the Kemper bag, and you need to show it now.
I should show it.
You should, because that is the most ridiculous thing that I've been researching that bag for 6 months, and I have not found a single person tell me that both sides unzip.
I will. Yeah, look at it. It unzips.
You can't see them in stores. Like if I walked into a store and there was one sitting there, I would have been like, "Oh, okay, this makes sense."
Right.
But all right.
Right now, even people who have it don't seem to know.
Like, yeah, it's like, why does the bottom unzip? Is that for cleaning? Like, no, no. So we ask every guest that's on the show this question, and that is, do you have a funny story or I guess just a funny story that you can share with us, either about profiling or gigging or something that's happened to you because of music?
Oh man,
it's hard. I put you on the spot. We do it to everybody.
That is no spot. No. I'll a funny story or something. Okay, I will. This happened to me. I was playing. We were playing a place for the second time in San Francisco called the Makeout Room, and the Makeout Room has this thing where they pretend that it's New Year's Eve, like pretty much every night. So, it's kind of a wacky place, kind of New Year's themed, but kind of not. So there's a moose head with a bunch of, braziers thrown on it. And you get free drinks all night if you throw yours up there, and in San Francisco, men can do that too.
I was just going to say, why not?
Here's mine. Yeah. So, we were playing the Makeout Room, and I had we had a white van, we put all our gear in and stuff, and
stalker van.
I was loading my, I think I was picking up an orange combo, a 212 orange 8030 combo, and as I bent down to lift it, I split my pants. And we hadn't played the show yet.
Oh no!
So I run in the bathroom and I realize it's split. And, on my backside, and I go, oh no, what am I going to do?
Just don't turn around.
What I found was 2 safety pins in my guitar bag that I knew were there, and I don't remember why they were there, but I was able to pin my pants enough that I was confident, I could maybe hide it, but yeah, don't turn around. So the whole night was just me kind of chilling against a wall, and then playing and never turning and looking at the drummer, which I would always do. But I'm sure he felt it was the most like stiff performance. And we were a little nervous, but the drummer said to me later, yeah, I don't know. We just never really seemed to really get into that one. And in my head, I'm thinking, yeah, well, it's probably me because I'm not looking at anybody. I'm like facing forward, like not moving,
hoping no one sees.
But we did sell it out, and so it was a successful show nonetheless. The
makeout room. I wonder if that's still there.
Probably.
Yeah. Well, that's a good point. Yeah, it was probably there as of 5 years ago, but that's a long time, especially for a venue like that.
Yeah.
Let's see the San Francisco makeout room calendar.
Oh my gosh.
There it is.
There it is. Still there.
Yeah. Well, at least for
Let's
now,
see,
until
ToneJunkie
we'll see after
is
COVID.
Playing,
Yeah, right.
It's got, let's see, what was scheduled for tonight? Freak Out a Go-Go, 60s, 70s soul funk disco.
Yep.
That sounds like the kind of thing they would do.
Yeah.
Yep.
Looks like a deep place.
The only question I have for you is, did you throw your brassiere up there or what?
Yeah. That was one of those places that paid you in drink tickets,
I'm always a sober band member too, so it's like hilarious when you go into a place like that and the band members are like, hey, I'm gonna go to the bar so I can get free drinks. I'm just like, why?
Yeah.
Why?
I was that guy. I'm that guy. If I drink, I can't play a G chord. I mean, so like I have to. You saw me have a beer while we were talking here. It's funny to see, like the band would say the same thing, and I'd say, "Here's my tickets. You guys can have them." I'd just get a sandwich,
Yeah.
And can I have Diet Coke all night long?
I have them make me coffee.
Yeah, it's crazy.
I'm insane.
I used to I used to pick out the people in my sort of circle of friends who I knew were the coolest, and I knew if they were going somewhere, other people would go too. I would tell them, "Come and I'll get you in for free," which was easy. But I would tell them, "There's also free." I would say, "Come, it's free." And it's free for you, and there's free drinks. And so they'd get there, and usually they wouldn't mention anything about the drinks. But if they said, "Hey, what? I thought there were free drinks," I go, "Oh, here you go," and I'd give them my drink ticket. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Just to get them to go.
Winning.
But yeah, because we used to do those places where we'd get a cut of the door. And they wouldn't pay anything, but they'd give you a cut of the door.
Oh, yeah, a cut of the door. And I use quotations for our podcast listeners.
And let me tell you something. Be smart enough to put your person at the door.
Yeah.
Right. Well,
you see 400 people in there. Oh, yeah, you got $20.
At that makeout room, they were open before it became like a music venue. They were a bar that people would be drinking it all day. And so,
come on, cough it up.
They'd send them around. They'd say, "Hey, if you guys want to stay, you got to pay $10." And someone just yell, some
obscenity,
some profanity at you.
Yeah, it's like get the bouncer and I'll pay you $10.
Yeah. You'd be like, "All right, well, have a good show."
Yeah. But you can't replace those fun times.
All right,
no, you can't.
Well, we've reached the end of our episode here. I will try to salvage what I can from this, and I'm sure we can salvage something. I actually ended up recording the Skype session as well. So hopefully we get 2 sources of audio and 2 sources of video, so I can at least do something, and maybe that will be the procedure going forward. You've been a great sport, and we've loved having you on the show. I have told this to many of our guests. I'll tell this to you as well. If you have anything to plug in the future, you want to come back, you want to talk, you just want to, come on and hang out, like you're more than welcome. And if we ever have the super rare vintage amp request, I will I'll shoot you an email or a message and be like, hey, you want to talk some vintage amps? Because we do occasionally get into those kinds of discussions where I am not an expert, and the first thing I say is like, I know enough, but I don't know enough. Like, I don't know enough, In fact, I think one of our first episodes or something was on Dumble, and it's one of our most downloaded episodes. But it's hilarious because it's like I listen back and like I know way more now than I did then, and I still don't know enough to really like have a decent conversation with an aficionado on it. So
sure,
and I know
have
this
come
much
back
about
sometime.
Dumble.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, man. It was good having you on. I have been David.
I'm a Jim.
I'm an HW.
And we have been Practical Guitarists tonight.